Thing over to Facebook.
Is it showing us live? Yep. Okay. We are now live. Thank you all for joining us for another IGS Facebook Live event. Before we begin, I just want to go over just a couple things. The website is still being worked on, and you guys are going to be so excited once it's up and ready. And we know all the links aren't working right now, but it's coming. We promise you. One more thing we wanted to touch on is IGS Annual Seminar Conference is going to be April 19th and 20th. You can register now. There is going to be great topics on researching your Indiana ancestors, and you guys are not going to want to miss this. It is going to be in person at Fort Wayne at the Genealogy Center in the Allen County Library. And then it will also be virtually, but one thing to know is that for being virtually, it will not be recorded. So if you plan on purchasing and going virtually, just know that you're going to have to make sure you set that time aside for the times of the presentation so you can see them. Now, on to our presentation. Today, we are excited to have Kosciusko, I pronounced it right, hopefully, and the Historical Society is here to talk about things that they offer within their society that can help you to learn more about your ancestors. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you ladies and let you guys start, share a little bit about yourself, and any questions, make sure you guys post on Facebook and we will present them at the end. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm Faye Myers. I'm the county genealogist for Kosciusko.
I'm Sharon Redstone, and I'm the librarian here at the Genealogy Library in the Kosciusko County Historical Society Old Jail Museum.
And we're going to share some pictures with you. Hopefully. Okay. Kosciusko County Genealogy Library. We are actually in the building with the Historical Society, so we also have that on our screen. I'd like to share a little bit with you about our county. The Kosciusko County is situated, as you can see, in that north central area of the state. And it was first ceded to the United States in 1832 as part of a treaty with the Indian tribes that were at that time living in the area. And the tribes go back to the 1700s. The Miamis were the ones that first built the villages around the Tippecanoe River and the lake areas. And then in about 1765, 1795, the Potawatomis moved in. They became the stronger band and actually took over. So there were quite a few areas around Warsaw, Atwood, Leesburg, Oswego, that northern part of our county that was settled. So in 1835, the county was actually established and then formally organized in 1836. Now our county is named for the Polish general, Thaddeus Kosciusko. He was named by John Chapman, and he also named the county seat Warsaw after the Polish city of Warsaw. This is a picture of the old county jail, which was built in 1870 of Indiana limestone.
We're having a little bit difficulty hearing you.
Pardon me?
Louder.
Oh, okay. The jail served for 112 years as one of the state's stoutest lockups. It's at North Indiana Street in Warsaw.
And it was listed on the National Register of Historical Places in 1978.
And this building currently serves as the headquarters for the Kosciusko County Historical Society, the museum, and our library.
Kosciusko County is comprised of 17 townships. From small towns, townships. We're going to look at those a little bit later because we have a number of genealogy resources in the libraries in those towns as well.
What I'm going to share with you as the librarian here at the genealogy facility is some of the vital records that we have. On the screen, you'll see that we have birth records and their dates 82 to 1967, the delayed birth records that were put together for people as they were trying to get their Social Security cards and did not have official birth certificates. We have original marriage applications. And the fun part about these books that you see at the bottom in red are that they are indexed from 1836 to 1921, but from 1882 to 1948, we also have the ability to look at an application that answered 10 questions about the bride and then 10 questions about the groom. And a funny story is that one of my ancestors had not married for the 4th time. I would have never found out who my 3rd great grandmother's was as far as her maiden name, because the time he married the 4th time, it asked what's the mother's maiden name, and that's how I found it. That grandmother Elizabeth was really a Mikesell. So anyway, there's all kinds of information in there that you can do. We also have divorces, and the divorces have been also indexed. We have a lot of volunteers who work in our facility, and over the years, the last 50 years that we've been established here, volunteers have put together indexes for many of these original records that we have. Oops,
Can we bring the microphone a little bit closer to you guys or that?
Sure.
Some people are saying they're struggling to hear it.
Okay, so I went the wrong way.
Perfect.
Which one? I'm a lefty,
Yeah.
so she's going to get me going.
Yeah, don't give the
Okay.
left-handed person the controls.
That happens sometimes. With our death records, we have many of the death records available from 1882 until 1960. And we have obituary indexes from the Times Union, which is one of our current newspapers here in town. And a gentleman who had started the indexing process did this in the 50s and into the 80s. And now we are trying to continue his process by volunteers taking the old newspapers and going through and doing the indexing for those. We also have in death, when you think of the death records, we have a lot of original funeral home books. They're from Pearson, Leesburg, all these little communities you see around. We have 7 different original sets that are prior to the 1950s. And realistically, they are indexed, again, by our volunteers, so you can get into those as well. The cemeteries here in our county, there's 80 plus. And in 2008, we started a cemetery project. And the cemetery project was to go through all of these cemeteries and do a walking count and names. We also utilized Benny books. Benny had done this kind of an activity in 1970, and it was done by township. So the township records for the cemeteries are marked on our map here, and all of those red stars are the cemeteries that were completed in our project that we did as a cemetery project, which you can find online for us. In 2008 through the beginning of 2013. In 2018, one of the things we started doing is adding obituaries to those online things. And the Beacon is the online source for it, and it is free. Later on, we'll talk about the Beacon more, and we'll give you that information of how to contact those. In the cemetery stories, I think it's interesting is that we have one of the old original deed books. You'll see it in the upper corner that says Lee's
deeds. And Lee's Deeds is nothing but cemetery deed properties, which is now in the Mentone cemetery system out at that community. I think that's all for death records. In our church records, we have many different denominations in the county. You have your Baptist, you have your Brethren, you have your Christian, you have your Methodist, you have your Episcopalian, you have the Church of God, we've got the Church of Christ, we've got the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Episcopal Church. I think I said most of them. But what has happened is, as people have donated to us copies of their directories, when they do a church history, we always see that those things that are published we get copies of. So we have a lot of those. So the church histories and records. What we do have too is a way in these archival boxes that you see in our photo, that if a church has disbanded or decided that their records are so old they don't want to keep them anymore, they give them to us, and we put them in our archival boxes and label them and have them here. So you have minutes from church meetings, you have Sunday school class records, you have all kinds of things like that. With the picture directories of today, we have many of those from some of the churches as well. What we have next is land records, and I feel that our county has been very blessed. I'll interject a quick story that says, over 50 years ago, a woman on the Historical Society committee was at the county courthouse, and she called the Historical Society members, a couple of them, one day and said, they're cleaning the attic at the courthouse, and they're getting rid of a lot of these original records. So the historical phone chain started, people came in cars, trucks, whatever. And for all that day, they pulled books that you see here on the shelf from the dumpsters and saved them. Some of our books, as you see, have nice new bindings on them. And we have people who you can sponsor a book, and therefore the book gets saved in the bindings, or we've written some grants to have that done. But what we have is a lot of maps and plat maps. And this particular picture shows some of our plat maps. They start in 1869 and they go through 1922 in these original books. Then in the 30s, they're much more produced and printed by companies. What we see in the original books are all hand-drawn photo pictures. So you have your township, your 4 square in the township, whatever, and they are able then to, in each section of those townships, list the property owner, the amount that would cost at that time. It gives us also the actual legal description of the property. One of the other things we've been able to do is we have a lot of deeds from 1836 and through 1951 in our deeds book, volume 1. Then there's deeds book, volume 2, that starts with 1852 and goes to 1861. And those deeds are all indexed in there, and it tells you where to find them on the microfilm rolls that we have. And so we can print them out for people and they can see how things are going. What we also see is we have ample text record books. At the present time, we are on a family search digitalization process. We have 8 collections here. Our marriage application books that we showed you already were one. Our tax assessor records are some of them that they're working on now. They came the end of July, and they will be here probably through November. And they are digitizing the projects as they go. And as these projects are digitized, then they are being placed on Family Search And there's specific ways to get in before the indexing process or the hints kind of process comes up with them. We have Hoosier Homestead Awards, and my family farm that I live on, my husband's family is he's the sixth generation. In 1842, we great grandpa George bought property from his uncle, and that's out near the town of Mentone. And so the original 80 acres is still part of the family. And Hoosier Homestead Awards, if you have property that's been in your family for a long time, are awarded through the state, and they're awarded twice a year in March and then at the state fair. If you've been on your property for 100 years, you can become a Hoosier Homestead Award recipient. We have 100 years and 150 years. We're at 180 some, so we're hoping that the kids after us, because we probably won't be around to do it, will do the 200-year award, and they are already giving out 200-year awards further south in the state of Indiana, because we weren't yet a county at that particular point in time. Up in the top left-hand corner, you see some red books that are called agricultural statistics. The agricultural statistics books are dated from the early 1850s through the 19-teens. At this point in time, we do not have all townships for every year, because in the process of saving all of these original books from the dumpster, they were put into a garage and housed there for over 2 years before the facility was available here at the library in the Old Jail Museum for us to start putting shelves like you see them on, and putting things out for display. What we have is we've lost some of them to mold, but we have quite a few. It's one of the largest things and new things that I think people who have rural ancestors need to start looking for their ancestor in their location. This particular series is done by township. So when you get into Franklin Township, where my husband's family farm is, you get to see sometimes 60 some questions are asked. One year there's 122 questions asked. So they ask about what's grown there, what you have there. They even ask about the home life. Do you have volumes, which means books? Do you have clocks? Do you have watches? Do you have sewing machines? All of those little tidbits that fill in the dash on your ancestor's date and birth and death helps us understand more about them. The fun story I have for this one is a family came in and had bought a historical home site, and they wanted to know more about the families ahead of them. They had us do the search, and we found in several of the agricultural statistical years that their farm was there. And we noted that there were 5 cows, and they had so many gallons of milk and so many pounds of butter and whatever. 3 years later, that same farm had 9 cows, but they had hired him, and he worked for room and board and $10 a month. But that year they did over 1,800 gallons of milk and 700 pounds of butter. So they've become a mini dairy. And so this family got real excited about the fact that we could tell them stuff about the farm that they just bought and some of the historical information that a family might be able to have passed down, but because this farm had not been in their family, they could learn more about them. And we thought that those agricultural statistics really give you a good glimpse into what's happening. So if you have pigs and so many died, or some were butchered, wired, or whatever, the crops that they had, they talk about the equipment, how many bushels of apples, what kind of things they had in their orchard. All of those kinds of ideas are there in the agricultural statistics. When we look at the last area here, we talk about abstracts. So as people have got away from having property sold with an abstract. We now have people who are saying, what do I do with the old abstracts? So they've given us a lot of original abstracts. And so we can keep them classified with surname and also location, township, and section. So we can go back and look at those abstracts and say, in our family farm, we still have the abstract. So we can go back and see when great-great-grandpa George bought it and how it was sold and when it was sold or when it was passed to a son, or all of those pieces of information are in the abstracts for those properties. I know as long as we own the farm, the abstract will stay with us. But if ever in the future, when the abstracts, when the farm would be, if a farm would be sold out of the family, then a lot of people are saying there is no value anymore. So we are taking those in as everything else does. We're looking for where and how we can take paper products, I call them, and put them to use for our genealogy sources, how we can make more of our families and do things like that. Okay, let's go to schools. I am particularly proud of the fact that with our schools back in 2015 at the state fair, we were brought to a booth about the legacy project for the state of Indiana's bicentennial. The lady found out I was from Kosciusko County and asked me if I was interested in doing a legacy project. And I shared with her, we had an old notebook that a gentleman in our county had done years ago about the old one-room schoolhouses, that it truly was a notebook. And some of the pictures in it were fairly good, but copies and things like that. So when I brought the concept back to the girls here, the volunteers and the genealogy group that we get together, I said to them, I think we could redo this school book and make it a project and offer it to the state of Indiana as a legacy project. This is a picture of the front cover of our book. It is Kosciusko's Schools of Kosciusko County, 1835 to 1975. Why did we stop in 1975? In 1975, consolidation for the schools was final in our county. Prior to 1975 and in the 1800s, the one-room schools, the townships were in charge of hiring your teachers, building your schools, and having education for your children. There was actually a land law that said that they had to have a section of monies for that process, for free and public education. At that time, we had 17 townships, and 14 of those townships eventually ended up having high schools in the 50s. We have a lot of information about those schools in this book. We've taken 17 chapters and dedicated the chapter to the township. We've put a map in it that shows you where all the old schools were. We've given descriptions of where the schools were, and we've added over 750 photographs of school pictures like you see here on the front of the book and at the bottom page. That helps us understand schools and education. So then in the 60s, early 60s, they started doing consolidation. A small high school would decide that it was okay to take their high school kids in and they would join another high school. So because Warsaw is our county seat, a little town of Atwood was the first consolidation, and it brought its high school kids in. It still had its elementary and whatever, but the junior high and high school came into town to Warsaw. And so those kind of consolidation things began. And at this time, we have 3 high schools on Kosciusko County properties. Tibby Valley is in the southwest corner, Wawasee is in the northeast corner, and Warsaw schools are in the middle. The students then who are on the edges of our counties in small communities
the town across the county line. So for the sake of the story, Evergreen is consolidated with a school system over in Marshall County, in the northwest corner of our county. And down in the southeast part, they consolidated over with Whitley County into South Whitley. So those kind of things have happened. That's part of what we did. And this school book was given a legacy award, and it's very a nice coffee table kind of book with a lot of historical information. Also on our shelves behind us, we'll show you that later on that we have school enumerations. School enumerations were from 1883 to 1895. And the father or
The adult in the family is listed as paying a small fee. And the only thing you see about children is how many girls and how many boys they are paying the fees for. When we look at the Kosciusko County School District books, that's 1894 until 1964. They are by township, and in each township, every school is named in those years. And then a teacher at that school is named too. So if you're talking high school, you might see math teacher, English teacher, whatever. But if you're talking elementary, you'd see first grade, second grade, or those kind of things. So it's a way to go back, knowing that your family member may have been in education, and find out where they taught, when they taught, and what time periods they were in. High school yearbooks is one of our really trendy things. We have, as I said before, 14 high schools at some point in time in the county. With the 14 high schools, we have yearbooks from every one of them. Our earliest one is 1912 with Warsaw, and it goes all the way, most of the volumes, through 2010. They have to get a little older for us to buy them at a cheaper rate. So we get them eventually. One of the townships was Seward, which is south and west, and it was called Burkett High School. And Burkett High School only ever had one annual. The senior class decided to make an annual that year and sell it as a profit for their senior trip. So when they were doing that kind of work, we knew that there had been one, we had heard about it, and a couple, because this was back in the early 50s that they had the one yearbook for the high school. And with that in mind, we found a family where a gentleman in that senior class had married a girl in that senior class. And lo and behold, they still had two of those annuals in their home. And he very graciously donated his to us, and she kept hers for them to still go through and talk about. So we get all kinds of donations from somebody knowing somebody and mentioning the fact of what we need or want or are looking for. And then people pass it on, and finally we get boxes of donations. A funny story there is one lady 4 years ago came to us and said her mother had some genealogical materials. Would we like them? And we said yes. She said she has lots of photos and they're all labeled, and we were extremely excited. And if you know what a banana box looks like at a grocery store, she came in with 9 banana boxes. And we have sorted through them over the years and passed on things to Elkhart and Marshall County and things around us because, again, if it doesn't fit with our Kosciusko County site of history, 95% of our library is Kosciusko County only. And so we pass it on to those who might better use it than we have. We also have some elementary school yearbooks. We also have school scrapbooks and school newspapers. A couple of our scrapbooks are really unique because it may be somebody from the early 50s and she's scrapbooked her entire elementary high school career, and they've donated them to us now, and they know the names, and there are lots of that kind of stuff. We also have a half a dozen different teachers who never married and had no descendants, so their school scrapbook that they had made about their teaching career is in our possession, and some of those. And then they used to have something called the senior scrapbook, and so seniors from some of the high schools, as families have gone through
deceased records and properties they've brought us in those kinds of scrapbooks. So we have quite a few of those.
Where's my next slide? School records. Oh, military. What we are looking at next is military records, and some of our best work, I guess you would say, is in Civil War records. We have complete booklets indexed of the enrollments. We have booklets that are the GAR Warsaw Posts. The post was number 114 and post 442. And there are minute records and scrapbooks from them. And they're all handwritten, they're all original, they are not indexed, but they're kind of a fun read. One of the other things we have are burial records for the Civil War system, and all of the ways and places throughout our county that our Civil War soldiers are now buried. Throughout the last several years, we found that people had original letters from Civil War soldiers written back and sent to their relatives in Kosciusko County. One stack of letters, there's partial pieces of some, but there's between 25 and 30 letters in the ribbon found in the bottom of a box at an auction, and the purchaser of that box brought those letters in and gave them to us and said, this is about this family. So what we have done with the letters is enclose them in archival safe envelopes, open so that they're readable, but we've also had some of our volunteers do the transcription. After reading the same writing for a while, it's a little easier for them to get on it and read it. But some of it's really a difficult read because of the beautiful script that they have. The letter that's here on our photo is actually from that one collection. We have 9 different collections of these letters. So there's upwards of 100 Civil War letters here, originals to see and to look at. The gentleman writing at one point has this beautiful script and lovely letters he's sending home to the family. And at one point in time, the writing changes. And he tells us that his writer, the person who's been writing for him, is no longer able to. So now he has someone new writing for him. So it was just an interesting part of the letter read and the documentation of the family understanding and knowing they would have known he was not a writer, but he was able to share that. So now we know that that was something he had someone do for him in the camp. And it was someone he was with for a long time. So I want to say over half of the letters are in this original script. We also had a lot of World War I things. Company H was our World War I unit, and we have records from 1912 to 1919 about those people in Company H, World War I. We also have World War II with Company L. And we have a special section that was written for women because one of the ladies in our historical society, who's now gone, wrote about her time as a waif and how she was in World War II. And all of the ladies she knew from our area, and she had people who would help her, and they've done quite a nice collection of the women from our county in World War II. There's also casualties lists and interviews from World War II gentlemen who, I would say they were probably, the interviews were done more in the 80s, the 1980s, but it's an interesting read again on what they thought and how they were sharing about their time in World War II. We have some limited items then on the Korean War. In our ability to save from the dumpsters, you see these brown books have all been rebound, or most of them. Some of them still have their original red leather binders. But what we have in court records are we have a lot of wills that are on microfilm, and they're indexed, and they're from 1844 to 1920. We have a lot of guardianship records, and the guardianship records are from 1871 to 1964. One of the stories here I like to share is a family who came and they were asking about the records of their grandfather. And he was born in Ohio, and that somehow through the process, they ended up as children, very, very young children, in a small town called Silver Lake, south of Warsaw, living with a grandmother. And they couldn't understand why anybody would abandon them. And what happens in the long run is the story is he brought them over from Ohio, gave them to his mother, and left and never came back. But the story really goes back to say the mother had been deceased, the father had died, and it was an uncle we found. And so going through these guardianship records and finding some of the names and reading some of the reports, we understood that they had not been abandoned by their parents. Their parents actually were both gone, and gratefully the grandmother had taken them in. We have estate records, we have administrative reports and records. Those are all running in, I'm sorry,
Oh, here it is. Those are all running from the mid-1800s, so to speak, to 1964. We have the estate records there. Circuit court books are also here, and they're original. They're 1835 through 1869, and it's John's cow got out and he's broken my fence, and what he wants a settlement on. Those kind of court records. There's court record fees, there's juror records, there's all kinds of things like that we have also in the circuit court books that are from 1835 on.
we have also, we're ready for the next one. Thank you, Faye. Family histories. In our family history books, we have over 500 family histories on our wall sitting here next to us in our top picture that you see. Families who have put together their history are welcome to donate it to us. Families who are starting their histories come in with information. We help them get their family started. And if you notice, some of these books on the shelves have the claw binder, the little plastic configuration claw binder. We have a machine that makes them. So if you can and you work on your family and you now have 25, 35 pages about family history, we encourage you to let us make a copy and put it on our shelf in a claw binder. As you get more pages and stuff and are going to add to your binder, because we'll make you one, we have you bring them in and we add those new pages wherever you want in your book on the shelf. And that's been very productive for people who are getting started to know that they can put their work on the shelf and have other people come in and utilize the information we've had. Photos are in them and whatever. This Mr. Parker does not live near here at all. I'm trying to remember. I think it's New Mexico or Arizona. And he has put together an excellent book. It's about 4 inches thick, and he has tons of photos in his. And then the general family surnames and the information about where they lived and what they did in their lives. Our surname file is also something that we have so that you can have a surname file in our system as well. And as people come and about a family, Johnson, they look at the surname file to see what's in there about it. Or we look on the family history shelves for the history books. But there are photos in there are copies of birth certificates in there are all kinds of just odd pieces. But the folder may be just with the one name of Whetstone on it, and particularly to Michael or to Castle or to any of the other names, it's just all about Whetstone since they have to configure them out.
pioneer families are 1850 and before, or 1860 and before. And you can become a pioneer family by showing your lineage.
And taking us back to one of the original families here in the county. And it's an application and you get a certificate for it. And it's something that a lot of the families try to do. The application form is online. We have special collections in the county, and the special collections that we've done are city directories and county directories. Our earliest one is 1889, and it's from the county area. We have stories that talk about, this is a photograph, it's from a photographer, and we know that the photographer's name is in Warsaw. And so we had a volunteer go through a lot of our city directories to find out when is the first time we see that photographer's name and when was the last time. So now we have volunteers over time have gone through and they've done all the photographers in those kind of books. So that's a kind of way of going about it. In the last year, we had a query from California, and they wanted to know about a certain thing in the little town of North Webster. And what was so interesting is Faye, our county historian, was here. She was volunteering that day, and she went through all those directories to find where the little town of North Webster, 5 or 6 pages, 20 pages, whatever, were in those directories. We made a nice long list. And we contacted the people in California and asked them to told them what we had. We had a list now of all of those places. I never heard from them again, but we had a list because I volunteered to do all of the good work. Okay, so then a funny thing happened about a month and a half later. Someone doing private research came and said, I understand you have a list of all of the North Webster, da, 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 da. So we kind of knew where it was coming from. And, you know, things like that happen. We try to be helpful and we don't charge. We just let people give us donations for those kind of things. We've also done through the city directories for throughout the county, grocery stores, because we had a query about that a while back. Where was this grocery store? Who owned it before? How long was it in business? So we just did a long list of how many grocery stores and where they all were. And it's surprising to see how many were around. We have business histories and directories. We have a lot of things pertaining to the lakes. The lake histories and lake guides. There's over 100 lakes in our county and 5 or 6 very large ones. And then others that are still quite usable by motorboats, etc. So we have directories from these. We have guides. We have fishing guides for some of them. So you know where the deep farthest travel spots are that you need to go for certain kinds of fishing. There's also small towns, 16, so to speak, in the county, and we have histories from them, maps about their location, old maps from in the 1800s of how many houses and lots there were in some of those towns. And we have the Sanborn maps for several of the communities around Warsaw, North Winona Lake, and some of the others. And we also have a lot of things pertaining to tax assessments in towns that help us out. We also have a shelf for us on business histories. Warsaw is called the orthopedic capital of the world. One time we had Biomet, we had Zimmer, we had DePue, we had 2 or 3 other smaller orthopedic companies here. And as those companies we developed, people write histories about them. So we put a lot of those on our shelf in the Warsaw kind of areas. Newspapers. We have lots of old newspapers online. These are some of the titles of the newspapers that are online from the small communities. We also have a very precious hard copy of many of these old originals downstairs in one of our archival collections. So when you look about an area of the county and you see some of these small communities, we do have a lot of newspaper. We newspapers here in Warsaw. But the Times Union newspaper microfilm is kept at our public library, which just is a block and a half across the parking lot here in front of our building, and is utilized over there. And they have the microfilm readers. We have a beautiful microfilm reader. We even have what's called it means that you can put in the name John Smith in your quotes, and anytime John Smith appears on that newspaper page,
Oh.
it will highlight it in yellow. You put in the word "the," it will also highlight every "the" on that page. So, it's just what you want to play with and what you're looking for. But we have that button, and I can't remember what we call that button anymore. I know it's an additional cost to our reader, but we've been real pleased with the use of it. In the room next to our library, we have multiple file cabinets, and they are filled with photos. They're filled with documents. They're filled with a memorabilia from a school paper, a commencement form, say. We do all of this kind of work through Past Perfect. So when an item is donated in the year of 2024, its first four call numbers are going to be 2024. It's then a dot. And if you're the seventh donor to give us something in the year 2024, your next number would be 7. And if you gave us 6 items, then there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 following that. And this Past Perfect computer program allows us and the museum to utilize it together and to go through and know where things are in the museum. So we deal mostly with photos, these documents, and the memorabilia. That's what I call paper products, because they're housed in these file cabinet drawers and systems. Past Perfect allows us then to go in and give a generic term of gristmill, and anything that has been indexed with the picture saying, Hardy's gristmill, then that would come up. Anything that would say Madison School, those words would bring up. So it's easy to find things that you want to share. Over 10,000 photos are in these drawers. And I would say a good 60% of them, maybe 80, because we don't choose to take so many unlabeled photos anymore. Initially, we were just taking a lot of them, but we have a lot of these photos that you can actually then look up a person and they will give you many choices to choose from. The voice films are a gentleman who had a movie theater. And back in the days, the movie theaters had newsreels prior to the showing of the movie. And Mr. Boyce felt that worldwide news films were not what he wanted to show. So throughout the week, he would take and designate an area in the county, and he would go there and he would take moving pictures. And he would then show those moving pictures prior to the movies. And that got a lot of people from out in the county coming in because he'd been in their town. Who was in the pictures? They didn't know exactly what would hit the floor or what would go on the newsreel. We have many pictures of when the gentlemen were going off to war. And they would come into Warsaw and they would line up and they would get ready and they would say their goodbyes and they would get on the buses and go off to being drafted. And so there's lots of those. We have lots of high school basketball films. So when Silver Lake High School, Silver Lake schools are no longer in existence here, but when they were having some of their, they were ramblers, when they were having some of their meetings, annual meeting every year of Silver Lake.
The alumni.
Thank you. I was missing that. They took a lot of time and went through those films and did those. We've also been very lucky to be generously donating many scrapbooks, and I have wonderful volunteers who go through them patiently and list all the names so we can look through them that way.
This is a quick look at from our website, the US Gen Web. That this is available. There is a link on our website. And one of the things that we wanted to point out is that they're about the middle of the page. And so I may start at the top and start clicking. About the middle of the page, there is a site-wide search capability, so that you can put in a name and it will pull it up if it's in the death records or make sure that was also.
Yeah.
So the Kosciusko Genealogy Library that Sharon has been sharing some interesting things about is we have a lot of stuff, needless to say. But within our county, we have a lot of other resources that I want people to know about. And as county genealogist, I've had a chance to go around the county and visit with some of the people and see what some of the things are. So we have 6 libraries, and each of them have some things of genealogy, very local type thing. So the Bell Library, for example, is in Mentone, and that's in the southern part of our county. And they have a genealogy link for obituaries and some microfilm that you can do from their website. And their microfilm is some of the old newspapers, the Community Farm News, Mentone Gazette, 1885 to 1930, that would be a range. Akron Mentone News, 1929 to 1993. And they also have obituaries that were originally typed on note cards and collected in a file drawer, and they have been scanned and are available as well. The other library is Milford. The little town of Milford has a website with a link to some of the resources that are available at the library on site. So they don't have as much digitized on their website, but they do have newspapers on microfilm at the library. Going back to 1888, they have the Mail Journal, which is a local small newspaper. And that's the one you're going to find who won the spelling bee, and who went to visit who to have tea or celebrated somebody's 5th birthday. To me, that's kind of the fun part of the genealogy as well. They also have a lot of the local yearbooks. As Sharon said, we are very blessed that we have so many yearbooks here, but maybe there's a year that we're missing that they may be available. And Milford in particular has some families, family history. The people that have local history here. They also have boxes of pictures that are not indexed, but are great fun things to go through. Another library is North Webster Community Library, and they have a large genealogy presence in our county. It's in the northern part of our county. And they have a genealogy section on their website that gives you links to a number of marvelous things, veterans videos that they have done, interviews with World War II veterans. They did a cemetery walk for many years where reenactors would be in the cemetery dressed in period costume and would speak in first person about their life. Local genealogy indexes, obituaries, maps of the villages. And then on site, they have a large genealogy room that contains quite a few of the local family histories. A small group of genealogists that met weekly there for several years decided to put these together as people were coming in and asking about looking for a family. The group decided to put together some of these family histories. Pearson in Washington Township Library, the town of Pearson, has a website, and there's a link under their title of history, and they have yearbooks online that have been scanned and digitized. And they have a book by a gentleman named George Nye. It's a history of Pearson. So very local news there. And they do have an Indiana room that has a number of the Pearson Press, the actual newspapers that are available to the public. The Syracuse Public Library, again, northern section of our county, has a website with materials that are available in the library. They don't have as much digitized online, but they do have things that are available, and they have a catalog there. And they have some historic books going back in the early days of Syracuse. And they've, through grants and so on, have been able to get some of these books bound so that the people can actually see them and look at them. Now, Syracuse Library, well, with one in partnership with one of the museums in the county, have been made available through Hoosier State Chronicles, a number of newspapers. So, and I believe they're the only Kosciusko County newspapers that are available on the Hoosier State Chronicle website. And then our Warsaw Community Library has an Indiana room that has quite a few print resources, local newspapers, online, the microfilm that Sharon mentioned, and obituaries. And they also, when you go online, there is a place where you can request a copy of the obituary, and they have volunteers that will look those up in the newspapers and make a copy and send it to you. So this is the information for each of those 6 libraries, their address, phone number, website, that I would encourage people to remember that there are those local resources. We also have 3 active museums: the Bell Aircraft Museum in Mentone, and it's made up of memorabilia from Larry Bell and the Bell Aircraft Corporation. And when he passed, his family willed all this material to the town of Mentone, and they set up the building, added an aircraft hangar, and now have several Bell helicopters, as well as his personal collection and information about his family. The Syracuse Wawasee Historical Museum is the one that has partnered with the Syracuse Library on the historic newspapers. And they also have a section on the website, our Indiana Memories. And they have a portion there that has about 3,700 photos and documents. And they are still working on more to upload. So these are pictures and things that are very specific to that area of our county. They also have some yearbooks that have been digitized, and that, again, in cooperation with the high school and the library. And then the third museum is the Winona History Center in Winona Lake, and it is a part of the Grace College. And it's located over in the original Westminster Hotel. And it highlights the legacy of Homer, Rodehaver, the Bible conferences, Billy Sunday. They provide tours of the Billy Sunday home. And for someone that's researching people and history in that area, you can make an appointment, and researchers can have access to their archives of thousands of documents and recordings and letters from Winona's past. And this is the information, again, name, address, phone number, website for each of those museums. We are under the umbrella of the Kosciusko County Historical Society, and we're housed in the old jail museum building. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about the Historical Society. We feel they have been a wonderful partner. Their dedication is to preserving, protecting, and promoting the history. The Historical Society was founded in 1966 and has just grown by leaps and bounds, I think, in the years since then. This wall of sheriffs over here is one of the parts that you see in the Historical Society in the museum section. And it highlights those early years of the jail. The sheriff and his family lived in the same building. The sheriff's wife prepared meals for the inmates. And it just kind of gives you a picture of the history of that as well. And then there are a number of displays about our Native American histories and Indian trails. And then highlight that our quarterly magazine from the Historic Society is called the Thaddeus, appropriate named, I think. And our county historian does a wonderful job, we think,
Yes.
in writing that every quarter. There are some events that are going on. Tomorrow is opening day for our genealogy library and the museum, as we have been closed for the winter. Later in the month, on March 19th, our genealogy group, which meets once a month on the third Tuesday of the month from 10 to 12. And on March, we're going to take a tour because it's more than just our library, one room here. There's 3 levels of the genealogy library and kind of behind the scenes. Everywhere from the basement to the attic, we have stuff
Stored.
stashed. Yes. April 16th, the genealogy group, our county historian, will be coming and talking about his role and his writing of the Thaddeus. In May, the 21st, Sarah Allen from Genealogy Librarian at Allen County will be coming sharing about DNA. June 18th, Bev True Palmer will talk more about navigating family search websites. And on June 21st, our Historical Society will be doing their circus celebration in conjunction with Warsaw's Friday Night Downtown. These are a few of the events that are happening at our history. And then very briefly, I also want to share our website with you because one of the things about that was mentioned earlier is our Beacon project on the cemetery preservation. So this is a screenshot of our website, and if you go to the genealogy section, one of the pieces that you can find is the cemetery preservation project. And as Sharon mentioned, this was the focus to photograph and map the 80+ cemeteries in our county to make sure that every gravestone was photographed and its locations marked. And this tells you a little, again, on the website, a little bit more about that cemetery preservation project. And there is a link here to our Kosciusko County's Beacon website. Click on that, it takes you to a cemetery site search. So all you need to do is, if you know the cemetery, that's great. And if not, you can see it down here. There's a box where you have choices where you can just click on all and it type in the name. You don't really need to know the year. Add whatever you can, and you click on search. And I typed in the name Luther Angel, and this is what will come up. And as you can see in the toolbar up here, it says report. So the picture of the grave site will show if there is something on the back of the stone, as there is in this one, that has also been photographed and noted. If the person was a veteran, again, this notes that he was a U.S. Army sergeant. If it's a woman and we know her maiden name or we have marriage dates, we add those as well. And most recently, we continue to add the obituaries, thousands of obituaries. And you can click on that so that it is large enough that you can read it and print it as well. And as a genealogist, I think this is genealogy gold to find all that information. The other piece that we like on this website is when the first picture that you saw showed report, but in this toolbar, you can also click on map, and it will show you a map of the cemetery with that particular gravesite highlighted so you know where that is. And a number of times we have people coming in looking for that they know that they're buried in maybe North Webster Cemetery. So, you know, we're able to pinpoint that so they can actually go right to it. And then there's the zoom feature, which helps. So there's the grave site, and now you can kind of see where it is in relation to the town, which entrance of the cemetery you would need to go in. And that's particularly important on some of the larger cemeteries we have, that, you know, which section is that grave site in. So that's kind of something we feel is unique and has been many years of and ongoing of volunteers working on that. And then I'll just share with you our information, how to contact us. There are 2 email contacts available. We do check the email and phone messages and try to get back to people pretty quickly now that we'll be open again after the winter. It's a lot easier. We try to follow up on those requests or information. And then the website is kosciuskohistory.com. And that's about all we have for you today.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, we've got a question here that was posted.
Okay.
Stacy Martin says, I have a quick question. Does anyone know when Highway 36 was built through Modoc? My grandmother lost her house because of this, and the information would help her with puzzling her timeline.
Oops, sorry.
That's not a community in our county.
Yeah, that's Randolph County.
Right.
Randolph County. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, that one
I
didn't
would-
ring a bell.
Yeah.
I would like to
That's
say
the questions I saw.
kudos on the cemetery preservation project. That is just simply awesome. I
Yeah,
love how
that
that. I'll probably be contacting you to see what I would need to do to start something like that.
We have those contacts for you. We worked with a gentleman at the courthouse who does the GIS
Mhm.
stuff for the county. And we, in a sense, we hired him privately outside of his hours of work at the county. And it's really the only county we know of in the state of Indiana, and maybe even the only county that we know of in most of the United States that has gotten the project this far. And the best part is it's online and it's free.
It's free. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
I also liked your idea with the family histories in your library where you start a binder and people can bring things and
Add to it.
I love that idea. You have such a wonderful collection.
Well, thank you. We are very fortunate. As Faye was saying, there are storage areas that the public cannot go into for privacy and for
Safety.
security, whatever. This is an old building, but we've just an immense amount of things were saved because over 50 years ago, solved the value.
It's terrific. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad to come. Yes, we
Okay. Stop share. Finally. I'm trying to stop share. There we go. Okay.
You did great.
well, thank you.
Very good.
Not too shabby.
Not at all.
Now, what you have to know is that Faye was able to put together all of the slides. I had nothing to do with it.
Which is why I made her talk.
That was a lot of knowledge to share.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm sorry. We kept going and going and going. So
No, that's great.
Okay, you want to take us off Facebook now?
Okay, no more questions?
Nope.
We're good?
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for sitting in and learning more about Kosciusko County.
good job, Kay.
Okay, thanks. And we
You're
will
kidding.
see you next month.
The Genealogy Center
Mhm.
will be joining us.
Allen County Genealogy Center. Early first Tuesday in April.
Yep.
So
So
that
hope to see you
sounds
guys all
awesome.
there. And again, thank you, ladies, for coming on here and sharing more about Kosciusko County. One day we'll get it.
Isn't it fun to say?
Yeah, we've been
But
practicing.
here's the trick. Now you've got to teach people how to spell it.
No, yeah.
And we do it in sets of three. It's KOS, CIU.
SKO. All right.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you for all that you do, because with something like this, that's a major project.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right.
All righty.